Welcome to HP FanFiction. Support me by subscribing the channel. Also, like and share the video to keep me motivated to make more videos like these. As soon as the news hit the hall, the children screamed in horror. Even the most ignorant ones knew how deadly those spiders were. The headmaster took swift control of the situation and proceeded to do the most sensible thing he could. He sent 1,000 scared children running onto the halls while the teachers searched the halls for the acromantulas. It's okay everyone, just follow me. The shaking voice of Percy Weasley came from the front of the group. They had separated the Gryffindor students into several groups, and he was put in charge of guiding the first-year students. No matter how nervous or scared he was, Percy swore to himself to get the job done.
"Is this way, Percy?"
shouted the fifth-year female prefect when she saw her partner make a turn into a hall with no exit. "I knew that." Percy turned around and walked the other way. Yeah, he totally knew that. Of course, there is no way the prefect would panic and get lost during an emergency. The Weasley twins laughed. "You two are not helping," cried the female prefect. "We weren't trying to," the twins said in unison. "Why are you two even here? You are third years," complained Percy. "Mum always said that family must remain united," said Fred. "And we wanted to see you in action," added George. Percy ignored the mocking tone of his brothers. This was not the time. "Do not worry, we'll be at the dorms soon enough." "Well, be safe then." Looking at the terrified faces of the first year, he decided to add something else. "Even if we encounter one of those beasts, I know just the spell to take them down." It was something like Arena Exuma. Or maybe Exuma Arania. I think it was something like that. "Yes. That doesn't sound right." The other prefect made a complicated face. "Oh yes, because when it comes to performing magic, it's important to be as vague as possible with your incantation, right? Of course that's what all the teachers say. Just shout something that sounds more or less like the spell you are trying to cast," the twins said with a mocking smile. "Children, don't panic and stay close to each other. Make sure no one falls behind," she instructed. "I'm so scared, and those seniors at the front are not being very reassuring," said Parvati. "Why couldn't Professor McGonagall come with us?" Lavender said with frustration. "The professors know what's best. I'm sure the headmaster had a good reason for this. Don't you agree, Harry?" "Harry?" Hermione turned around only to find an empty dark corridor behind her. "Harry, where did he go? He was right behind me a moment ago," Hermione said with panic in her voice. "Point me, Neville." Harry felt a pulsing sensation and his wand moved to point to the left. "I must be getting close," is not pointing upwards anymore. Harry had separated from his group as soon as he saw the opportunity and rushed to find Neville. He was now running through a familiar hall on the 6th floor, when he spotted the first acromantula. Harry pointed his wand forward, a rock the size of a basketball appeared, and with a smooth flick of his wrist he disappeared the rock in the direction the spider was following. The young acromantula was just the size of a medium dog. It got completely destroyed by the rock that Harry threw and didn't even have time to make a noise or complain. "Ah! Help!" He heard a voice calling for help, just a bit further down the hall. This was a corridor he was very familiar with. The trophy room was just a bit further away. Last week he came here to have a talk with Daphne, but the room was on the 4th floor back then. This corridor tended to move a lot between the 4th and 6th floors. After hearing another scream for help, Harry finally saw what was going on. Neville had gotten himself inside the cabinet that contained all the trophies. A large group of spiders were right outside, taping on the glass with their legs. Good thing that glass has been reinforced with an unbreakable enchantment. Otherwise, he'd rather not think about how close that boy had come to a nasty death. He conjured more rocks and vanished them, taking out several more spiders. The acromantulas turned to look at him and made some angry noises, but none of them attacked him, just stood there. "What is going on? Why don't they move from there?" Some of the acromantulas stared at Harry while others returned to tap on the glass while the terrified Neville kept screaming. "It's like they are only interested in killing him." He was no expert on animal behavior, but this was certainly strange. He was about to unleash death upon the creatures when he heard a loud noise approaching from behind. He turned his head and saw another acromantula, but this one was much bigger than the rest. This one was almost half the size of the Aragog he remembers. Its massive body was wide enough to cover most of the hallway. Harry now had around 10 acromantulas in front of him, and one giant one behind. And he had to deal with them before they could slay Neville. The giant acromantula hissed at him while moving its frontal legs in an attempt to intimidate him. The ones behind him did the same. But they did not attack or get closer to Harry. He did not understand the reason for their unusual behavior, but did not care either. He had one job to do, and he was going to do it. Harry pointed his wand to the floor right beneath the giant acromantula, and then followed it with a swift upward flick. The spider gave a tremendously loud shriek as it was impaled by a stone spike that rose from beneath the creature and lifted it in the air. With the biggest threat already incapacitated and dying, Harry turned around to face the rest. He threw a low-powered bombardier, aimed downwards, just strong enough to blow up several stone tiles, and then followed it up with a depulso, sending all the sharp pieces of stone to the acromantulas, who had no way to dodge them. 5 more spiders went down. Fire was left to go. Harry conjured a dozen knives and sent them at light speed to the creatures. The acromantulas shrieked in pain after being cut and stabbed, but none of them tried to run away. Not a single one of the creatures wanted to separate themselves from the trophy case where Neville was hiding. 4 more spiders fell victim to the knives. There was one left. Harry decided to get a bit creative with the last one. He tapped his wand against the rocky wall to his right. For a moment, nothing happened, but then, the part of the wall that was closest to the acromantula came to life. A stone hand 3 times the size of the spider formed from the wall itself, and with its palm completely opened, it smashed the creature in one quick motion like it was a common fly. With the deed done, the hall became silent once more and Harry contemplated what to do next. Neville had stopped his screaming and seemed to be staring at the dead acromantulas from inside the glass piece of furniture. Harry considered for a moment going to Neville and checking if he was okay, but he did not want to reveal his involvement in this matter. He was confident that Neville had not been able to discern his identity based on the construction of the cabinet he was in. Only the front part was made of glass and Harry never approached that area. Instead, he killed all the acromantulas from a good distance. The decision was taken away from him the moment he heard a large number of people getting closer to him. The teachers are already here. Fine, I can leave the cleanup to them. Harry lifted his wand and disappeared from the hallway before the adults turned the corner. This way. I heard some noises. Professor McGonagall hurried her steps. She let out a loud gasp when she saw the macabre scene. By Merlin. This is. Dumbledore's eyes scanned the hallway meticulously, pointing his wand around until it stopped on the glass cabinet. There is someone there, he pointed forward. Be careful, that acromantula is still alive, warned Snape as he walked from behind the headmaster. They moved as close as possible to the wall and past the twitching giant spider. McGonagall stared at the stone spike that was impaling the creature. This was done with transfiguration. The construction of the spike must have been perfect to be able to lift such a monster. Dumbledore was walking ahead of the group when he suddenly stopped. Headmaster? Snape called, wondering what took the attention of the old wizard. Dumbledore said nothing, and pointed his wand at one particular spot. He moved it around and whispered some words.
This can't be.
What is it, Albus? McGonagall asked this time. This area here, it has traces of... Before the headmaster had time to answer, someone started to shout, "Kay, is there someone there? Help!" McGonagall hurried up and moved to the cabinet, where she finally spotted the terrified Neville hiding inside. "Longbottom," she exclaimed. "Unlock the doors, Mr. Longbottom," ordered Snape. "Is it safe?" Neville looked around, expecting to see more spiders appearing. "It is quite safe, my boy. You don't have to worry about the acromantulas any longer." Dumbledore tried to sound reassuring. Neville nodded and released his iron grip on the doors, allowing it to open. "I'll take him, Madam Pomfrey," McGonagall said, after making sure he did not have anything serious that required immediate action. "Yes, do that. I will visit the infirmary a bit later. We still have some work to do here," said Dumbledore. The professor took Neville away by the hand. The boy follows without complaints, looking to be in an almost state of shock. With the two of them gone, Dumbledore and Snape were left to examine the scene. There was acromantula blood splashed everywhere. It was quite a shocking view. I'm glad Hagrid is not here to see this. He is fond of these creatures. Snape observed carefully the remains of the beasts. The conjured knives were still embedded into some of them. Then there was the giant stone hand that crushed the last one. You think a student could use transfiguration to this level of skill? Asked the potion professor, pointing at the hand. Dumbledore contemplated the question for a moment. It would not be impossible for a talented 7th year to create something like that. I believe Minerva could give you a couple of names. At least that's what I would say if these were normal walls. Dumbledore tapped the wall with his wand. There are protections weaved into them that should prevent students from affecting them with magic. So not the work of a student then. Is that what you think? Asked Snape. I have one more reason to believe this wasn't done by someone so young and inexperienced. Whoever did this, he or she, escaped with apparition. Snape was filled with shock. From inside Hogwarts. That's impossible. Yes, well, there is always a way to make the impossible possible. The next week was not a fun one for Harry. He was first scolded by Hermione for disappearing all of a sudden, and then got a week of detention with Mr. Filch. If that was not enough, Daphne has been contacting him and demanding to take some action against the professor. It took a lot of effort to convince her to wait. He had to get some solid evidence to warn the Aurors. Showing their cards too soon would only serve to put Neville in more danger. The poor boy was traumatized enough after what he went through with the Acromantulas. He was taken away by his grandmother the day after and he still has not come back to school. But it wasn't all bad. At least on Friday he had received some good news. The items he had requested from Borgin and Burke's are finally ready to be collected. He was sitting comfortably on a sofa inside the room of requirements. In front of him, sprayed over a wooden table, was a series of objects. Ingots of different metals, shiny stones, rune carving tools of high quality along with some other crafting tools. And finally 2 wand holsters, and a wand. I spent most of my money, but I think it was worth it. Especially when all of that money came from selling things he found inside this room. He started by picking up the wand. He wasn't sure of the wood. It looked like oak. His only requirement for this wand was that it had to be impossible to trace, and it needed to have a phoenix feather core. It always had been his most compatible one. He felt the wand bond to himself immediately. As long as the wand had no owner, he would have no issues bonding with it. It feels a bit weaker than my other wand, but he gave it a flick and conjured a blade in front of him. With a swift push, he sent it flying at a tremendous speed until it ended up stabbing one of many shelves of the room. The blade became embedded up to the hilt before disappearing. Harry nodded, looking satisfied. This will be useful in case I have to fight using less legal spells. In his honest opinion, the ministry was too strict with its long list of illegal magic, and if he was going to be fighting dark wizards, he was not willing to hold back. He put on one of the holsters on his left hand and stored the other one. He activated a runic cluster on the holster that would prevent it from being seen and placed his spare wand inside. It was better to keep them hidden. A wand holster was not something a student would normally carry. He would only put on the other one when going outside. Now, let's see. He picked up one of the precious stones. It was completely clear like a piece of glass and had some marine on the surface. This was one of the many arc stones he bought. These stones had a single purpose. They were able to store large amounts of magic to be used at a later moment. Their primary application was to power up wards. Normally wards will consume just a little bit of magic to operate, so they can function with just the ambient magic in the air. But if the property becomes under attack, that's when the heavy defenses are activated, and the consumption of magic would increase drastically. Without one of these stones to keep powering the wards, these would collapse in a matter of seconds after the attack started, making them pointless. They had been used in every ward since the creation of the magical ministry, 5 centuries back. The one under Hogwarts was well over a millennia old, and is at least 100 times larger than any other one on record, making its existence very much a mystery for Harry. But not many people knew about that one. It was a piece of knowledge that one headmaster left for the next. If more people knew, they would be going crazy to get it. Harry said. The ones on the table were much smaller than the minimum required for ward use, even for a small house, so people didn't have much use for them. They could be used to power a magical artifact on rare occasions, but Harry had another use for them, something that wizards of this era had not come up with yet. People can get a lot more creative when their race is being massacred into extinction. I suppose there was a lot of bitterness in his voice. He examined the little stone. It was around the size of his fingernail, but even a stone this small was able to hold more magic inside than your average adult wizard. The idea is to embed these small arc stones onto jewelry pieces that you can carry around with you. When you feel you are getting close to being magically exhausted or when you are about to unleash some grand magic, then you activate the stone and transfer the magic to yourself, like having an extra battery. The runic work for these artifacts was also very simple. Harry had the idea after a particular exhausting battle, and then all it took was to spend a few hours with Hermione to come up with the necessary runic cluster to activate the transference. The only setback was going to be the metal alloy necessary for the jewelry. Goblin steel was the best magically conductive metal that people knew at this point in time, but Harry knew how to make one even better. He already had all the necessary ingredients, but the process took a long time. Harry glanced over the pile of ingots he acquired. To process all of that, it will take at least 3 months. But the time wasn't the only problem. But he also had to think of the location where to set up his workshop. The room of requirements is only safe for as long as he is inside. But once he leaves, anyone could stumble upon it by accident. So is not the most reliable to leave something that you don't want anyone to find for several months. I may have a better place in mind. Another month passed, and we were getting close to March. Neville came back to school after 2 weeks away, and Harry could finally find out what happened that day. After his argument with Ron, he was asked to stay behind by Professor Nayar. According to Neville, the professor claimed to be worried about him and his poor performance in class. He offered Neville to stay for some extra practice, and the boy accepted. Late that afternoon, Neville left the classroom and was on his way to the Great Hall when he was ambushed by the spiders. Auras were called but no arrests were made. It is unclear to Harry if they suspected anyone. That is not information they would share with him, even if he was the son of one of the head auras. Harry had been a bit worried about Hagrid when the Ministry got involved, but apparently his connection with the acromantula nest inside the Dark Forest was not something many were aware of. As for Professor Nayar himself, he has been very careful since the last attempt and has not made any suspicious moves. Daphne had become increasingly frustrated by his lack of action, and he had the feeling that she was close to doing something stupid, even for an 11-year-old kid's standard. What she didn't know was that Harry had several trackers on Neville and the professor. He had placed 10 trackers on the professor to be more specific. Of those 10, Nayar found and disabled 9, but 1 was better than none. As for Neville, he didn't need to place any tracking charm. Every student of Hogwarts was being monitored since the first time they entered the castle. The secondary function of the sorting hat was to place a tracking mark on top of the student's head, invisible to the naked eye. This mark will be able to track the position of the student inside the castle, or even former students if they never found out about it and removed it. His father and his friends had taken advantage of this to create their Marauders map. Since Harry had full access to the wards, it was very easy for him to put together a simpler version of that map to track only Neville and Professor Nayar. This way he could always keep an eye on those two, and intervene if it looked like Neville was in danger. He could then be able to catch the professor in the act. Having him arrested after that should be easy. It was a dangerous plan for Neville, that is. But he could not think of a better way to gain the evidence he needed to get the auras involved in this matter. Any Muggle surveillance device he could think of would not work at Hogwarts. If the old Luna was here, she could probably come up with some runic array device to record video data into a crystal or something. When it came to ancient runes, even Hermione could not compare to the odd blonde. This would be so much easier if we're at war, Harry said while reminiscing about his past. Life was hard, yes, but things were simpler back then. If you came across a dark wizard, you killed him. If you came across a demon, you killed it. Now he had to take into account laws, human rights, politics. It would be so much easier to just go and kill the man. Then again, I'm not even sure the professor is truly a hired assassin sent to kill the boy who lived. I mean, whatever Lord Greengrass heard must have been just rumors. Yes, the whole thing with Neville being attacked by acromantulas after leaving his office is suspicious, but he sighed. Who am I trying to convince? There is no one else who fits the bill. He knew the other professors extremely well. Nayar was the only unknown factor. It had to be him. The head of a training dummy exploded. Tusk. It's always the good defense teachers. It is like the position is cursed or something. Wait, it probably is now that I think about it. Another dummy exploded. Off. I think I have enough for today. Let's go check on that thing. He still had plenty of time before dinner, so Harry made his way to the castle foundation. He opened the painting, went downstairs, and walked for several minutes at a brisk pace, until he reached the furthest corner of the room where he had set up his little workshop. Even if Dumbledore were to come down here for some cosmic causality, there was little chance of him walking up to this distant corner of there where there is absolutely nothing of interest. So this was the place where he decided to set up his station. Everything worked automatically and he only needs to check on it once a week or so. It was a very simple setup, just a table with a cauldron and several other small tools. The cauldron was used to create the metal alloy called magicate. It was a combination of gold, silver, dragon blood, and several other alchemical ingredients. The mixture had to be melted and combined very slowly to prevent it from being separated. The cauldron was enchanted for automatic heating and stirring of the ingredients. All that was left was waiting now. It's looking good. This is going faster than I had originally predicted. It should be ready in a bit over a month. The last time he created this alloy it took him 6 months. It could be because he is using brand new high-quality tools, or maybe the conditions of this chamber made the mixture combine faster. But no matter the case, it was good news. He may be able to assemble some of his old tools before the end of this year. This is so annoying, Harry thought while being violently shaken. Are you listening to me, Harry? The Ice Queen of Slytherin was nowhere to be seen. Instead of he had to deal with an obnoxious 11-year-old, Daphne Greengrass, who had kept calling for him and leaving messages during classes until he finally agreed to talk with her alone. You know, if you keep calling me so much during class, people are going to start talking. Personally, I don't care much about my reputation. But that won't be good for you, right? Daphne got her hands off him and took a step back. Lately Tracy had started to point out how distracted she had been lately, thinking about the issue with the boy who lived, and the killer professor. This is important, Harry. We can't let that man kill Neville. She didn't really care that much about the Gryffindor boy, but her family had already signed a contract with the Potters. There was no going back now. Their side was chosen. If the boy who lived died and Voldemort won, her family would be doomed. She had spent the last 2 months stressing herself non-stop about this. But Harry didn't seem to care at all. Always disappears to go do who knows what, and then says he is too tired to talk or that he doesn't have time. She looked at his calm expression and frowned. You are not taking this seriously at all. This is not how I wanted to spend Friday night. I wonder if the elves still have chocolate pudding. Are you even listening? Daphne shouted. You know that door is not soundproof. He decided to let her know. You are so frustrating, she shouted even louder than before. Fine. Hold on. He reached inside his robes and pulled out a piece of parchment. What's that? She watched with attention as he unfolded the paper and placed it on the coffee table. It's blank. There was nothing written on it. You are very impatient, you know that. Harry pulled out his ebony wand and pointed at the parchment. Reveal your secrets. Whoa, Daphne exclaimed. A map of the castle appeared on the previously empty parchment. I have read about this. You protected the contents with a password, said Daphne. Yes, and as you can see, and the best you could think is reveal your secrets. That's probably the first thing people would try. She interrupted him. No one will get their hands on it. And that's not important. Now, as you can see, this is a map of Hogwarts, right? She interrupted him again. Did you draw this yourself? Of course, who else is going to? I made it in like 1 hour. Now if you don't have any more critiques, take a look at the 2 names here and there. He pointed with his wand. The Professor one was inside his office while the one with Neville's name was inside the Gryffindor dorms. Daphne looked at the map with great attention. Oh, it moved? Neville's circle moved from his room to the common room. I put a tracking charm on those two. This map shows you their actual location inside the castle. If the professor tries anything, I will know thanks to this device and I will intervene or call a teacher. This is impressive, admitted Daphne. I'm glad you like it. Now as you can see, I have everything under control. There is no need for you to worry about this matter any longer. Just leave it to me. Harry hoped that this would be enough to appease the girl, so she stopped bothering him. Wait, you put a tracking charm on the Professor of Defense against the Dark Arts, and he didn't notice? She sounded dubious. I put 10 tracking charms actually. He removed 9 of them but was unable to find the 10th one, he explained. 10 tracking charms? But isn't there a spell to detect them? My dad said he was going to teach me next summer. He said it was important for my own protection to learn to detect and remove such charms. Daphne said, well, of course there are ways to detect them, and once you find one, removing it is very easy. But I know a few methods to hide them well and avoid most methods of detection. Daphne looked impressed enough.
How do you know so much about these charms? They are not even part of the school curriculum. Did Lord Potter teach you about them?
It's not that complicated actually. He avoided the question. All that is needed is... Harry stopped talking all of a sudden as he realized something. Wait. What is it, Harry? She looked at him, wondering what could be the issue. Now that I'm thinking about it, is strange. The method I used was not a bad one, but there was no guarantee to work against a wizard who was very knowledgeable in charms. He was able to find 9 of my trackers, but not the last one. Why didn't that strike me as odd before? He knew why. He has been preoccupied with other matters, and hasn't been giving this much thought even if he didn't want to admit it. For someone else, having an assassin waiting to strike at any time would be something nerve-wracking, but for Harry it didn't rank very high on his priority list. However, it wasn't his life the one that was on the line, so he should have been paying more attention. He looked at Daphne for a moment. It seems like he is going to have to involve the adults after all. He can't let this continue now that he suspects foul play. We may have a problem. I need you to contact. Without any warning, the door opened with a banging noise, and a big figure stood at the entrance of the room. Daphne gave out a frightened scream as she hurried to stand up from the couch. Harry cast a silent protego charm around them to block the pieces of wood that flew their way. So is Greengrass and Potter. Professor Naya looked somewhat troubled as he entered the room. Harry gave a quick glance at the parchment on the table. The circle with the professor's name was still inside his office and hadn't moved. The Indian professor caught this and grinned. I think I forgot to take the cloak where the tracking charm was placed. How careless of me. As I thought, he left the last one on purpose in order to find who was trying to keep an eye on him. Harry concluded. You two are some of my favorite students. It's a shame I have to kill you now. Kill us. Daphne was trembling like a leaf. Harry put a hand on her shoulder. Open the entrance in the fireplace and leave. But Harry pushed her towards the back of the room. Go now. Daphne composed herself and nodded before turning around and running to the fireplace. The professor aimed his wand at her back and fired a red spell that Harry recognized as a stunner. He blocked it by manifesting a protego shield in front of her. The girl did not waste the opportunity. She opened the secret door and went inside. I'll call for help, Harry, she shouted as she was leaving. You can create a silent protego charm, and you can even cast it on others. You have really been holding back on my classes, haven't you, Mr. Potter? He gave another glance at the passageway Daphne used to escape. I'll deal with the lass a bit later. Let's start with you. He aimed his wand at Harry. You won't be able to catch her before she reaches Snape's office, Harry said. That passage leads to the dungeons and the exit is very close to the potion professor's office. That's too bad for you then. Severus and the rest of the professors are currently in a reunion, and the headmaster left this morning for a Wizengamot meeting. The professor shrugged. So, no help will be coming. I'm sorry about this. I don't like killing children, but you shouldn't have stuck your nose in my business, Mr. Potter. So, no one is coming. Harry looked distracted. Professor Nayar took this as him getting scared. A normal reaction for a child facing a ruthless assassin. I'll make it quick at least. Avada Kedavra. A piece of the door floated in front of Harry and exploded. What? The professor's eyes widened in shock. He had expected this fight to end with that one cell. That was a weak killing curse. You didn't put much effort into it. Harry commented before standing up from the couch. Nayar took a step back by instinct before realizing what he was doing. There is something wrong with this kid. Why is he so calm now? The professor thought. You said before that no one was coming, right? No one can interrupt us and we can kill each other in peace. When Harry looked at Nayar, a small smile appeared on his face. You know how frustrating it was to play subterfuge, to track you around trying to collect some evidence without hurting anyone or breaking the law. I used to have other people to do those things for me. Harry seemed to be talking more to himself rather than the other man. Nayar didn't understand what was wrong with him. He just wanted to end this quickly. Avada Kedavra. Another flash of green light flew to Harry. This time a rock appeared out of nowhere in front of Harry and blocked the spell. Conjuration. Nayar could not believe it. That was Nayar level magic. The rock exploded and its pieces bounced off an invisible shield that he never even noticed. Harry cast. He had also missed when Harry had taken out a second wand. I have to admit it, after practicing many fields of magic and studying hundreds of ancient tomes, I only have a talent for one thing when it comes to magic. Harry held both wands out in a peculiar way. He was only holding each wand between his index and heart fingers, while keeping his palms open, almost like an orchestra director. He opened both arms out. I guess I should keep it down to legal spells by the ministry standard. I hope I do remember that list, reflects. There was a lot of furniture in that room. Couches, chairs, tables, lamps. As soon as Harry moved his wands in a smooth pattern, every single piece of furniture inside the room was shot toward the front of the room where the professor was standing. Nayar lifted the strongest shield he could muster, and felt everything shaking as couches, tables and other objects impacted his shield at tremendous speeds and shattered in millions of pieces. After the assault ended, the professor looked in awe at the sheer destruction left behind. Had he not poured as much magic as he did to protect himself, he would have ended up being converted into a bloody mess of flesh and bones. What is this? Who are you really? Nayar had met in the past some old wizards who used magical rituals to make themselves look very young, and wondered if this was one of those. The person in front of him was certainly not a child. Harry looked at him and tilted his head sideways. You know who I am? I'm just Harry Potter, but never mind that. Now that the room is clean, we have more space for our duel. We can begin now. Begin? The professor blurted out. He had already thrown 2 killing curses at him, and then was almost crushed to death by furniture. But for Harry that didn't even count as a warm-up. Omnia mutatio, Harry said softly. The defense professor looked at him in perplexity. He had learned a very large amount of spells, but had never heard of that one. By the wording he could guess it was a transfiguration meant to create a change in the physical appearance. But he didn't observe any change in the boy. He did not have time to think longer. Harry aimed both wands at him. Each one was going through different motions. And then he heard it. Expelliarmus. Petrificus totalus. Incarcerus. 2 flashes of light and a set of ghostly-looking chains were conjured in an instant. Professor Nayar reacted swiftly and put up a shield that blocked the spells and moved away before it shattered. But he was welcomed with another barrage. Locomotor mortis. Tensaggio. Tarantallegra. Expulso. Nayar created a wave of condensed air to deflect the 3 curses that Harry threw at him. He recovered his balance and started at the young boy like he was some sort of monster. How are you doing it? How are you casting 3 spells at the same time? He was sure of it. He heard the distinctive voices every time Harry had performed his magic. Serpent Sorcier. Aranea. Scorpius. An entourage of venomous creatures appeared next to where he was standing. 2 big green snakes hissed at him and lunged at his legs while spiders and scorpions walked more slowly towards his position. The room was big enough to have some freedom of movement. Unfortunately for him, all of the previous spells cast by Harry had been pushing him against a corner when he found himself unable to escape. Did he plan this far ahead? But he had no time to think about useless stuff. Confringo. The head of one of the snakes blew up into pieces, but the other one was able to get on his side. Shit. Ah! The professor groaned in pain as the snake bit the lower part of his leg. Defender. He used the cutting charm to remove the head of the venomous creature. He had to pry open and manually detach the head of the snake from his leg. His limbs trembled, something likely caused by the venom he had been injected. His eyes moved to the rest of the dangerous creatures. They were only a few feet away from him.
Incendio.
Right as he was about to finish his fire jinx, the wooden floor came to life. He did not have to presume much about the cause of this. Harry used free transfiguration magic on the floor. He detached the wooden planks and used them as an improvised catapult to launch the assortment of venomous creatures at the professors. Several scorpions and spiders attached to his tunic as the muscular man did his best to rid of them. Meanwhile, Harry continues to cast spells on him. Locomotor Mortis. Incarcerus. Langlock. As always, they came in groups of 3, making it incredibly difficult for the professor to defend himself. Luminous chains attached to Nayar's legs and caused him to fall. His tongue was twisted in an impossible manner, preventing him from uttering a single word while the small creatures continued their assault. Scorpions poked him on his hands and face, while spiders got inside his robes and started to bite him with their venomous fangs. Keshav Nayar was a combat veteran who survived countless dangerous situations. He has battled against all sorts of wizards and witches, and always came on top. But he knew that this was going to be his last battle. Even if the massive amount of venom didn't kill him, then the boy, no, the thing who was now walking towards him, was not going to let him live. As Harry got closer to him, he noticed something peculiar under the dim lighting of the room. There was something unusual on the palm of his hands. He could not make out what it was until Harry stopped, just a few feet away from where he was lying down. Nayar's eyes opened widely when he saw it. He finally understood how Harry managed to overwhelm his defenses by continuously casting 3 spells at a time. There were 2 disgusting human-looking mouths where the palms of his hands should be. This also explains why Harry was holding his wands in such a bizarre manner. He could not hold them normally as the wands would cover the mouths otherwise. That spell he cast at the beginning, something mutation. He transformed his own body to be able to cast magic faster. No, is not that simple. Nayar considered just adding some extra mouths or arms on your body was not enough to start casting multiple spells at the same time. One's mind would need to keep up and form the spells. These require wand movements, chantings, and mental images. He wanted to ask him who he really was under that disguise. He wanted to know the real name of the wizard who had bested him, but he was unable to form words as he was suffering from the effects of the Langlock jinx. His body was starting to go stiff. Nayar had already lost complete control of his legs, and his arms were going next. He knew he did not have much time left. I may not be able to win, but I can go with a bang. Nayar moved his shaky right arm forward. The grip on his wand was still firm as he pointed it at Harry, who was now right in front of him. This was the best chance he was going to get. He could not make use of the killing curse as this was one of the few spells that were impossible to cast silently. But there was another very deadly magic he could use in this situation. Nayar focused everything in this spell. This was going to be the last time he performed magic, and he wanted to at least take his opponent down with him. Dark flames formed before his wand, creating a sphere of fire that started to grow quickly. A hand made of rock emerged from between the wooden planks and closed on his wand hand, extinguishing the flames and crushing his hand along with his wand. Nayar let out a blood-curdling scream as his flesh and bones were torn apart. You really thought I was going to stand here and let you cast fire? Harry gave his professor an incredulous look. It seems like I overestimated you, Professor Nayar. Anyways, let's end this. I still have to think where to hide your body. One more rock hand appeared beneath his head. Harry looked at the body of his dead professor. That was somewhat underwhelming. To think that it had me worried for a second. The fight with his defense professor had come at an unexpected time. He had hoped to at least be able to complete his magic storage artifacts so he would not have to worry about being magically exhausted. But in the end he didn't even need to deplete half his magic reserves. All the spells he used were low cost, but still it ended very fast. Famous hit wizard from India, and the best you could do is a couple of Avadas and a half-assed excuse of fiend fire. He sighed. Fine, let's not waste time. Daphne could come back at any moment with the other professors. He first stored his official wand inside his robes. Harry then dispelled all the creatures he had summoned before using a shrinking charm on the corpse of the defense professor. After that he levitated the body, which was now the size of a peanut, and hid it inside the fireplace's secret entrance. He had several days to find a more permanent location for the corpse, but for the moment it was safe there. Reparo. He pushed a lot of his remaining magic out, forming a clear image of the original state of room in his mind. Thousands of pieces of furniture start to fly around and join other pieces, forming back the couches, table, chandelier and other decorations until everything was the same way it was before the fight. Harry nodded, satisfied with the result, then walked into the hall and locked the room. At the end of the hall was a big window with iron bars and a set of stairs that led down. That will have to do. He aimed his secondary wand at the window. Bombarda. With a loud explosion, the window bars, along with a big piece of the wall, were completely destroyed, leaving a gaping hole in its place. All that was left now was to wait. Daphne must have had a lot of trouble finding the professors, because it took almost 15 minutes before he finally heard the sound of footsteps approaching. Good thing my life wasn't actually in danger. Harry, Daphne and Professor McGonagall hurried to his side with Snape and Flitwick following behind. Mr. Potter, are you hurt? Miss Greengrass informed us about an attack. McGonagall examined him up and down. Harry looked down at himself. His robes were completely clean and he didn't even have a scratch on his body. He did consider causing a few injuries on himself while telling the tale that he was able to repel the stack of the professor long enough for him to give up and escape, but sounded too ridiculous. No one was going to believe that a first-year student could duel against a veteran hit wizard for more than 2 seconds without dying in the process. The only combat spell he is supposed to know is the Flipendo, and that can take you so far. It was better to make a different claim. He didn't hurt me, Professor. He said that his only target was Neville, and he didn't want to hurt anyone else. Then he ran away. Harry pointed at the hole in the wall at the end of the corridor. McGonagall and Flitwick gasped. By Merlin, was it really Professor Nayar? Asked the small teacher. Yes, Professor Flitwick. It was definitely him. Daphne can corroborate this, assured Harry. And the alleged assassin ran away without attacking you at all? No, even once. That seems very incredible, Mr. Potter, asked Snape. Would I be alive if he wanted me dead, Professor Snape? Harry retorted. That was all Snape said before approaching the broken window and examining the scene. Why don't I take you two to the headmaster's office? I can call him from there and we can wait for him while drinking some tea. Yes, suggested McGonagall. I will call the Auras too, and I think we should notify their parents, correct? Said Flitwick. McGonagall hesitated for a moment. She knew how little Dumbledore liked to involve the Auras in Hogwarts matters, especially since they had recently been called by the awful affair with the Acromantulas. But she also knew that it was inevitable to have the Auran parents involved. Both children were from pure-blood families, and Harry's father was a head Aura. Yes, please do so. McGonagall had no choice in this. Surely the headmaster will understand. They arrived at the headmaster's office and we were told to sit down in front of Dumbledore's desk. A house elf brought them some hot cocoa, while McGonagall went to call the headmaster using the Flu network. Daphne kept stealing glances at him. He knew what she wanted to say. She didn't buy the story that Harry had told. After all, she was there when the professor had promised to kill both of them for knowing too much about his intentions. However, she was smart enough to keep her mouth shut in front of the other professors. After hearing Harry, he looked at her and their eyes met. She now looked satisfied enough, so she started to drink her cocoa in peace. A few minutes later, McGonagall came back to inform them that the headmaster was going to be here shortly, and that he requested that we wait for him. Then Professor Flitwick came back and also said that both our parents and a squad of Eoras were on their way to Hogwarts at this moment. Harry grimaced. This is going to be a very long day. You better be grateful, Neville. A team of Auras, along with James Potter, arrived at Hogwarts, followed by Dumbledore. Just a few minutes later, it was almost midnight when things finally calmed down a bit. Daphne did a good job of avoiding any details that would contradict his story of how the teacher ran away after being found out. The Auror team got all the information they could from the 2 eyewitnesses before leaving. Snape then escorted Daphne to her dorm, leaving Harry alone with his father and Dumbledore. The headmaster did not seem satisfied with Harry's explanation, and had tried to use the Legilimency twice on him. Harry avoided eye contact with the headmaster, but still felt a familiar sensation of an intrusion attempt. Luckily, Dumbledore was only trying to feel his surface thoughts, and was not trying to dig deeper. Otherwise, the existence of his occlumency shield would be revealed to the old man. What Harry found surprising was the fact that the headmaster dared to do this much in front of his father. "I'm taking him home for a few days," said James. "Is this really necessary? Harry is completely fine, and we don't need this to gain more attention among the students." Dumbledore was very insistent with Daphne and Harry that today's events must be kept a secret for now. Harry could agree on that. There was no need to cause mass panic, and they will never be able to connect Nio with Lucius Malloy anyway. "I'll have to do something about that, myself." "I'm sorry, Albus, but this is not negotiable. Do you have any idea how difficult it was to convince Lily to stay at home and wait?" answered James. "He'll come back in a few days after things calm down a bit." Dumbledore sighed and looked at Harry again. "Very well, James. Have him back in a few days. I'll come up with some excuse for his absence." James glanced at Harry, and this one noticed something odd on his father's eyes. It was only there for a moment before disappearing. "Let's go home, son. Your mother can't wait to see you." Harry took his father's hand and let himself be guided to the fireplace. "You remember how to use flu powder, right? The code is Potter Manor." Harry nodded and took some of the flu powder in his hands. "Potter Manor." Harry disappeared in a burst of green fire. When he came out of the fireplace, he found himself in an unfamiliar place. He was expecting to arrive at the main hall of the manor, but instead he was in a spacious but empty room, surrounded by brick walls and only a handful of candles to serve as illumination. He heard the fireplace ignite behind him. "What is this room?" Harry asked. "Potter Manor is a fake entry that leads to an underground security room beneath the manor. The real entry is Marauder's Nest. My real son has never traveled by flu powder, so he had no way of knowing it." "Who are you?" Harry turned around and saw his father pointing a wand at him. "Was my story that bad?" he said, keeping his calm despite the situation. "No, it was believable, but I found evidence of a fight in a nearby room. There was residual magic corresponding with a cast of the killing curse and also signs of a recent reparo charm being used on the furniture." Harry knitted his eyebrows. He didn't know about these detection methods. Moody never explained them to him. They mostly focused on fighting and survival magic. He had wanted to join the Auras in the past, but the war started again before he had the chance. Now he had to think about what to do next. If it came to it, he was fairly confident in defeating his father, but he would lose his family if he did that. What would be the point of this second chance then? Can I trust him with the truth, or at least some of it? But if he couldn't trust his family, who could he trust then? It has become quite evident that hiding his abilities and intentions is going to backfire. He was sure that his father was not the only one suspicious about him, but Albus Dumbledore is going to be more subtle about it than James Potter. "What happened to my son?" James asked. As much as he wanted to hide his emotions, his eyes betrayed him. "Answer me." "I am your son," said Harry. "My son would never have survived a fight with a veteran hit wizard. I never gave him any training either. I did try, but he hated to study any form of magic. He couldn't even." There was something else James wanted to add but decided not to. "You are right, I am not the son you remember or the son you raised in this house. But I am who I claim to be. I can prove it," offered Harry. James frowned and kept his wand in place. "So you claim to be my son but not the one I raised? Since I am sure I only had one son, what are you claiming to be? A time traveler or something ridiculous like that?" James said. "No, is even more ridiculous than that," Harry thought. "Why don't I start by proving my identity? May I take my wand out?" "A magical oath?" James guessed his intentions. "Fine, but no sudden moves." Harry did as told. He removed his ebony wand from his robes, leaving the other one inside his holster. He held the wand out for James to see. His father nodded. "Go on." Harry made a smooth wave with his wand. "I swear on my life and magic that I am Harry James Potter, son of James Potter and Lily Potter nee Evans. So mout be." James's eyes opened like plates as he saw a flash of light, confirming the oath was complete. "Impossible, right? I'm supposed to cast a spell now." Harry gave his wand a flick and in turn James's wand was ripped from his hand and flew onto Harry's. James's shock was replaced by a wave of uneasiness as he felt his wand missing. Harry noticed the look his father was giving him but paid it no mind. He walked towards James and returned the wand to its owner. James took it with some hesitation. "I have proven that I am who I claim to be, and that I have no hostile intentions towards you or the rest of my family. What else would it take to convince you?" asked Harry. "Must I take a blood pact?" he added. "No," James was quick to say. "Those things are extremely dangerous. People have died for the minor of mistakes." "Fine then. What else?" James remained silent for a moment. "What happened to you?" "I came from a future, a distant one, many years from now." He tried to choose his words careful in order to reveal as little as possible. "You come from the future. Distant travel to the past is—" "Wait." James recalled something important. "This is not how time travel works. Even if you did somehow manage to travel to a distant past, you would still be in your own body." "True. But I doubt this was normal time travel. After all, I died." "You died?" James cried. "Yes, I died, and then I woke up in my 10-year-old body. No memories of any childhood before that." He avoided mentioning that the future he came from was from a completely different timeline. "And before you ask, no, I don't know how it happened or why I'm here. I was as confused back then as you are now. The day that you woke up in the hospital, after the incident, you were acting very strange, and you had amnesia but the doctor said it was normal. That was you then." James looked at him. Harry nodded. "I didn't want to deceive you and Mum, but I didn't know how you were going to react if I suddenly started talking about time travel and stuff like that. When the doctor talked about the amnesia, I just took advantage of that opportunity, and considering your reaction," Harry's eyes moved to the wand that was still being highly held by James. His father noticed this and stored the wand back in its holster, but by the posture Harry could tell he wasn't completely relaxed. "Wait, you said you died before. How did that happen?" James asked. "Voldemort. He comes back. There is a very long war. Most died, even me. It's best if I avoid telling you too many details about the future." "So me and Lily also," James said solemnly. "Yes, very early. And even Lyra and Holly too?" James asked with dread. Harry chose to remain silent. He hated having to lie to his father. James took Harry's silence as a yes. "My little girls, I can make another oath if you don't believe me," Harry offered. After all, the things he said were technically true. He just omitted some information. Although he would prefer to avoid another oath, no matter what, there were always some risks. "No, you don't need to do that, Harry." James looked somewhat regretful. "Sorry for doubting you, son." "Thanks, Dad. So what are we doing now?" "We should tell your mother. We cannot hide this from her," said James. Harry nodded. "She deserves to know, I supposed. How do you think she is going to take it?" "Probably better than me. Don't worry too much about it. Oh, before we go, there is something else I need to know." "Is this about the missing professor?" asked Harry. James nodded. "I would like to know what truly happened." Harry explained to his father about the information discovered by Lord Greengrass, and how Professor Naya was hired by Lucius Malfoy. He then talked about his meetings with Daphne during the year and how the professor found them. Some of those things James already knew, but there were many details that he and Daphne had avoided telling to the Auras and Headmaster. "So you thought it was a good idea to put tracking charms on a veteran hit wizard? Did I not teach you any better? Tracking charms, even the best ones, are not that hard to detect, and any decent assassin is going to be an expert at avoiding being tracked down." "Yes. Well, I have no excuse. Let's move on." Harry could only blame this mistake on his lack of experience in this type of war. "So, what happened next?" "I know he didn't just run away without a fight." "Oh, I killed him, and hid the body. You don't have to worry about finding him." Harry did consider hiding that bit of information, but there was no advantage to it. It was just a matter of time before his father discovered that Professor Naya was no longer alive. And then, what little trust Harry had managed to acquire so far will be completely shattered. His father will never trust him again after that. And if he had learned something from today's events was that he could not do this alone. In his past life he had many friends and companions who helped along the way. Without them he would never have survived long enough to destroy Voldemort. He had been too naive to think he could do everything by himself. You killed him. James gave him an incredulous look. Harry nodded. I told you that I lived through a war, remember? Don't be that surprised by those things. How can I not be surprised when my 11-year-old son tells me he just killed someone? It was self-defense thought, Harry explained. Okay, James calmed a bit. When we tell your mother, we are skipping this part. Harry? Lily came running to them as soon as they went into the living room. She gave her son a long hug before checking him for injuries. He is fine, Lily. A healer has already performed a checkup on him. James measured her. Her eyes moved to land on her husband and she did not look happy at all. What took you so much time? It's been hours since we received the message. I had to sit here and wait here for so long. I'm sorry, things got a bit complicated. James looked at Harry for a second. We have some things to tell you. You have a lot to tell me. I only know that someone attacked our son and Daphne at school. Lily had finally let Harry go of her embrace and they all went to sit down. Before we start, James closed the door and placed an anti-eavesdropping charm. Then he approached the fireplace and temporarily disabled the flow network. This startled Lily.
What is this about, James? Why are you taking so many precautions for?
What we are going to tell you must not come out of here, not even to our daughters, at least for now. James turned to look at Harry and this one nodded. Harry, Lily stared at his son in confusion. This is more than just about the attack, right? Yes, this is going to sound crazy, Harry started. It was already past midnight when Harry and James were done with the explanations. Lily sat there in silence, moving her eyes from James to Harry. There are some details that make little sense to begin with. Time travel doesn't work like that. And second, if you are the future version of our son, why are your personalities so different? I don't want to badmouth my own son, but my Harry was not a good person. I knew this deep inside me, but never dared say it out loud. And I don't think time would have changed him soon much. Harry looked down and let out a sigh. Lily, what are you saying? He made a magical oath in front of me. I tell you, that cannot be faked. I understand your doubts, but he is our son. James insisted. He did not want his wife to make the same mistake he did. I'm not saying he is not our son, but there is more to this story, isn't it, Harry? Lily's intense glare was starting to make him uncomfortable. When you woke up at the hospital, you looked at me like you had just seen a ghost. You failed to remember many details of your life, so the healer concluded you had amnesia. But there was one answer that struck me as odd. Odd? Asked James. You weren't there yet. Lily glanced at James. The healer asked Harry about his date of birth, and Harry answered, July 31, 1980, with complete conviction. He got the date wrong. Why is that so important? James didn't understand it. But Harry did. He could already imagine what conclusion his mother had arrived at. People would often tell me that you were the smartest witch of your generation when I asked about you. They were right, Harry smiled. Harry? What do you... James was interrupted by Lily. An alternate timeline? Asked Lily. Harry nodded. How is it possible? Isn't time supposed to be linear? James exclaimed. Research about time travel has been forbidden by the ministry for the last 2 centuries. Time turners have been limited to a few hours to avoid any big change. We don't really have a way to know, but there have been theories about alternate timelines, and if he came from a different one, where... Lily opened her eyes widely as she realized something. What is it, Lily? James looked at her with concern. Lily looked at Harry. Were you really born on July I was, yes, admitted Harry. So really are you from a different timeline? Asked James.
One where you were born on a different day?
But I don't see that changing much, to be honest. This changes a lot. Think about it, James. Lily raised her voice. Have you forgotten about what Dumbledore said back then? Born as the 7th month dies. James's eyes opened like plates. That's impossible. But then, the old man told you about the prophecy then, said Harry. James and Lily turned to look at him with surprise. You know about it too. Albus only told us part of it, the same part that Voldemort learned about. He wanted us to know why he was so obsessed with the Longbottoms, said James. Harry, were you? Lily seemed hesitant to ask what she wanted to ask. That's right. Harry glanced at his mother. I was born as the 7th month died and my parents had defied him 3 times. The bastard chose me, Mark, as his equal. That Halloween night in 1981 he came to my house and made me an orphan before falling victim of his own curse. He died, albeit temporarily, and Dumbledore declared me as the boy who lived before dumping me on the doorsteps of the Dursleys. Harry said with a hint of bitterness in his voice. Despite the many years that have passed, he still has a hard time forgiving the old man for that one. You said that we died early in the war. I didn't think it was this early. No wonder you didn't remember Lyra and Holy. They were never born in your time, said James. He left you with Petunia and Vernon, cried Lily. But they hate magic. What was he thinking? Lily dear, calm down. You are going to wake up the girls. James tried to placate his wife. Lily went to hug her son. Oh, Harry, I'm sorry you just had a tough life. Well, it wasn't ideal, but it wasn't all bad. I later on got to meet Uncle Lupin, and I also had Sirius for a few years at least. Sirius was alive? James perked up at hearing that name. Harry, we want to hear everything about your life, but now is getting very late. Let us all go sleep and we will talk more tomorrow. We have a few days before you need to come back to school, right? Asked Lily to her husband. That's right, said James. We have time, we are not going anywhere. Harry wasn't sure if they realized the implication of what he had revealed to them. If the one occupying the body of their son was a different version from a different timeline, then what happened to their son, at least to the version they knew, the one they raised since he was a baby? Whatever the case, they didn't ask him. Maybe they knew he didn't have the answer, or maybe they preferred to ignore it. He spent a total of 3 days at home. There was a lot they had to talk about, but with so little time they decided to postpone any serious talk to summer vacations. James seemed to be extremely busy with work and only came home late at night. Lily did her best to pretend that nothing had changed after his revelation and continued to treat him the same way. Harry could tell what she was doing but did not point it out. Holly was thrilled to have him home for a few days, and Lyra didn't seem to care much. She received some basic explanation about the events at Hogwarts and didn't ask any further. The lack of reaction his sister had after finding out about the attempt against his life was somewhat concerning, but something he didn't have time to worry about right now. His return to school didn't call for much attention. He was just a first year and most of the school didn't even know he existed. Even in his own year, he only talked with a few students. You are back, Hermione greeted him with a smile after he entered the common room. She seemed to be the only one who had noticed him. Are you feeling better from the Dungarian fever, was it? She asked, looking a bit unsure. By Merlin's pants, what is a Dungarian fever? Is that the excuse Dumbledore promised to make? Harry wondered. I'm fine now, thanks. He hoped that she would not ask any questions about this disease that he hoped at least existed, in case she goes for some research at the library, if she hasn't done so already. I'm glad to hear that. She felt relieved. Did I miss anything interesting? He asked. Yes, actually, just the day after you left, the headmaster informed us that Professor Nayar had to go back to India for some urgent matters that could not wait until the end of the school year. Hermione explained. Oh, that's too bad. He was a good professor. It wasn't a complete lie. Nayar had been a good professor for the most part, if you don't count the whole trying to murder students business. Hermione nodded in agreement. Yes, I liked the way he explained things. But do you know who is replacing him for the rest of the year? She asked, with excitement in her voice. The headmaster, he said. Hermione looked at him with surprise. Yes, how did you know? Because the same thing happened after Quirrell was reduced to ashes. Educated guess. Hi, Harry. Harry and Hermione turned their heads to see Neville, Ron and Seamus descending the stairs of the bedrooms. Hello guys, Harry greeted the trio. Where were you? I thought you quit school or something, commented Ron. He was sick, remember? Professor McGonagall said something about some fever or something, added Seamus. Dungarian fever, Neville corrected. I have an aunt who had that a few years ago. Nasty thing, she spent several days in the bathroom. Okay, I don't want to know, thought Harry. Everything went back to normal business after that. He had expected Dumbledore to call for him for one of his private meetings at his office that he had grown accustomed during the years. He knew the old man had some doubts about his story, but Harry was unsure of what kind of conclusions he could be making. The fact that he didn't call for him could mean that his worries were not severe, or the headmaster was worried about his father's reaction if he called Harry to his office in order to read his mind. After all, this version of Harry was not an orphan that no one cared about. He was the son of a head Auror, and one that Dumbledore was hoping to bring to his side again. After the inquisitive look he received from Daphne on the first day of his return, he was waiting for a note to land on his table at any moment. But to her credit, the girl managed to hold on until Friday. As usual, he snuck around using his invisibility cloak, and found her sitting on a bench close to their usual meeting room. She gave a cry of surprise when he threw the cloak over her, revealing himself. Her expression moved swiftly from shock to anger, and she hit him on his chest with her tiny fists. "Don't do that again, Potter. Did you notice that you only call me Potter when you are angry?" This question earned another punch to the chest. Deciding to keep his mouth shut, he guided her to the room. "We shouldn't take too long. I'm sure the headmaster is trying to keep an eye on me." During the entire week, the people inside the paintings have shown a lot of interest in him, following him around wherever he went. That's why he had been avoiding going to either the Room of Requirements or the Castle Foundation. "Are you going to tell me what really happened to the professor?" Daphne went right to the point. "I know he didn't just run away." "Can't tell you that," he answered. "Do I not have your trust? My family made a magical binding contract with yours. Betraying you would have very serious consequences, as you already know." She raised her voice with an unusual display of emotion. "Calm down. I'm not trying to insult you or your family's integrity." "How good are your occlumency shields?" Harry asked. Daphne raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because if you want me to reveal that kind of information, I must be sure that no one can steal it from you." "Are you suggesting that someone may use legilimency on me here in Hogwarts?" asked the blonde. Harry nodded. "Father said that they are good for my age." Harry took his spare wand from the holster. "May I test them?" Daphne looked hesitant but eventually nodded. This seems to be the only way to get her answers. Legilimency. She felt like a hammer had smashed her head open and fell backward with a painful cry. "What the bloody hell was that, Potter?" she shouted. It was a good thing he warded the room with a silencing charm. "That was a half-assed attempt to invade your mind. I'm not very skilled with the mind arts, so I don't have the subtlety that others have. But I can still say with confidence that your occlumency shields are trash, for lack of a better word." "What?" She looked ready to bite him. I guess with her shields broken, the Ice Queen is not that good at keeping her emotions in check, Harry concluded. "Calm down. I may have an idea," he added. "Occlumency lessons?" asked Daphne with disbelief. "And what makes you qualified to teach me?" "I destroyed your shields with no effort. Someone more skilled than me could get into your mind, get whatever information they want, and leave before you even noticed it." Daphne looked worried now. "Is that possible?" She then looked at Harry. "But you said you are not very good at the mind arts. Can you really teach me?" Harry shrugged. "I'm better at occlumency than legilimency, that's for sure. I would not claim to be one of the best at it. But I can definitely help you improve. And if I better my mental defenses, are you going to answer all of my questions?" "No," Harry answered simply. "What? Why not?" she asked with a demeanor that showed her young age. "Don't pout if you become able enough to defend your mind. I will tell you some things." She looked offended. "I don't pout. Can Tracy come with?" "Sure. Why not?" He would like to bring Neville too, but separating him from Ron and Seamus might be impossible at this point. "Well, since you won't tell me anything else, I will take my leave." She stood from the couch and made her way to the fireplace where the secret passage was located. "Don't worry, I can open it myself." She tapped her wand on the stone and the passage opened.
"Oh wait.
Daphne." Harry had just recalled something important. The warning came a bit too late, as she had already climbed into the opening. "What is it?" There is something blocking the tunnel." "What is this?" asked Daphne. "Oh, crap." Harry prepared himself. "Oh, Merlin. What is this smell? I can't see anything." "Lumos." Harry heard the girl let out a tremendous shriek before she passed out from the shock. Right, I should get rid of that corpse. He hasn't had the time to remove the decomposing body of Professor Naya. The shrinking charm he used to hide it was only meant to last a couple of days. He removed the unconscious Daphne from the hole, and placed her gently onto one of the sofas. He then pulled out his spare wand. Sorry about that. Obliviate. It was the least he could do for the girl. Let's take care of you now. I think the dark forest would be a good choice for this. There are plenty of carnivorous species that will make the body disappear. He grabbed the professor and a parent away. Are you serious, Daphne? You didn't tell me this study group was going to have 2 Gryffindors. Tracy looked at her friend with a deep frown. To be honest, I didn't know about the second one either. Daphne looked at the second Gryffindor in question. Granger, isn't it? Hello. Hermione looked very nervous under the invasive gaze of the 2 Slytherin girls. Harry decided to help her out. I figured that a study group would look more natural with more people. Hermione is already well known for her interest in academics. So you thought that we would be in less trouble if our housemates found out about this group? Asked Daphne. But she is a muggle-born, said Tracy, earning a look from the other 3. I didn't mean it in a bad way, she was quick to explain. But how would Malfoy and the others react if they knew? We don't owe him any explanations. Daphne frowned. You don't, but there is no need to make things more difficult for you two. We can keep our activities a secret, suggested Harry. We are not breaking any rules, right? Hermione looked worried. Of course not. This is just another type of defensive magic, said Daphne. Then why couldn't I find anything about it in the list of magic taught at the school? Asked Hermione. Most children from pure blood families are taught by their parents, so is not covered in Hogwarts curriculum, explained Harry. That's not fair. So Muggleborns never learn to protect their minds? Asked the girl. If they want to learn, they can buy a book about it. As Daphne said, is not illegal to learn it, is just not taught in school. Harry said as they continued to walk through the 6th floor. Here we are. He opened the door of an empty classroom. Professor McGonagall said that we can use any of the empty classrooms on this floor, as long as we leave before dinner time. That's very generous of her, said Daphne. Well, it was her favorite student, the one who made the request. Harry looked at Hermione and this one became embarrassed by the comment. Oh, this classroom is smaller than the ones we use, but is very cozy, remarked Tracy. The class was indeed small, with only 10 seats in it, plus the teacher's table. The 3 girls went to look for a place to sit down while Harry closed the door. You are not the only one who finds these classrooms cozy, you know, Harry added. What do you mean? Wow, those seats are very comfortable. Hermione laid back on her chair. I mean that these isolated classrooms that no one uses are very tempting for older students to visit at night, for their activities. Harry chuckled. He knew this from first-hand experience. He and Ginny had visited several of them during his 6th year. Daphne realized what he meant while she was resting her head against the table. Ooh! She jumped off the chair. Gross. What the? Tracy looked down at the table with disgust. Oh, Hermione left the chair in a hurry. Can we use a different classroom perhaps? The girl said with a disgusted expression. No, was Harry's answer. You really think there is any classroom here that hasn't been used? Get over it. I'll just teach you the cleaning charm. You'll be fine. Another month passed in peace, and the end of his first year at Hogwarts was coming to an end. The scrutiny that Dumbledore had placed him under was seemingly done. He had not noticed any more paintings spying on him, and ghosts were not following him anymore. Whatever suspicion the headmaster had about Harry's actions was satisfied, or maybe the old man realized he was not going to find what he was looking for. Harry had spent the entire month without his usual trips to the Room of Requirement. The only thing he was able to train was his occlumency shield, while also helping Hermione, Tracy and Daphne with theirs. He had considered going straight to the headmaster's office and telling him everything, about himself, his timeline, everything he knew about Voldemort and how that maniac had ruined the entire world. Things would be so much easier if he could count with the support of his old mentor and he did not need to hide his actions from him. But he had many worries and doubts that kept stopping him every time the idea popped into his mind. To begin with, he didn't know if deep down, this was the same man he knew. Different events could lead to people with different personalities or beliefs. And even if he was the same person he was familiar with, how would his Dumbledore react to the information he had? There was no way to know for sure. One thing he was certain of, Dumbledore would never agree with his methods, and the things he has planned on doing. Harry had long moved away from being his innocent pupil, who only resorted to stunners and disarming charms. Those methods had proven ineffective against the Voldemort and Death Eaters he met in the past. The headmaster wanted to make his enemies see the error in their ways, and give them a chance to change their minds and be better people. It was a nice thought, but it could only be applied to sane people. Trying to teach reason and morals to a group of immoral madmen should be considered madness in itself. It might be a bit early to cast judgment upon all Death Eaters of this world, but he could judge at least one of them. Lucius Malfoy had already gone too far. Hiring an assassin to kill an innocent child was beyond vile, and Harry was not willing to let that one slide. During this month, he had not heard a single thing about the progress of the investigation involving Professor Naya, but one thing was assured: Lucius Malfoy has not, and will not suffer any consequences for his actions if he's left to the law. I'm sure Father would also disagree with this too, but there is no other way. Harry continued to sneak around the dungeon corridors until he reached the entrance to the Slytherin dorms. The three boys he had been following since they left the Great Hall were about to open the entrance. Always pure. As soon as the words left Draco's lips, the two snake statues moved aside, revealing an entrance. The trio of boys went inside without noticing the invisible intruder following right behind them. Harry observed his surroundings from under his invisibility cloak. The Slytherin common room was a lot darker and gloomier than the Gryffindor tower. The lack of light could be explained by being below ground, and lacking windows that could let moonlight inside, but with the great variety of magical lighting sources, this was unquestionably a design choice. He could spot a few groups inside the room. A young couple were getting busy in one of the corner sofas. Someone was reading a book in front of a fireplace, and a group of 3 older boys were occupying the couches at the center. Draco entered the room and stared at the couple in the corner, a bit taken aback by their lack of shame. "Oh? Is Mr. Malfoy already interested in snogging?" The one who spoke and the other 2 boys started to laugh.
"Shut up, Flint."
Draco spat with anger. Despite the age difference, Draco did not have to show any special respect to his seniors in the house. After all, his father was one of the most politically powerful people in the country, and he was his only heir. Even the oldest students treat Draco with care. Marcus Flint, the 5th-year Quidditch captain, was a tall but skinny boy. He smiled at Draco. "Don't be like that, Draco. I was just joking a bit." "Yeah, we know you have a fiancée. If you want to try, all you have to do is ask her," one of the other seniors said. "Just make sure you don't leave her alone with Derek. That guy likes them very young." Flint gave Draco an honest warning. Draco frowned at the reminder of his engagement. This was something his father decided without his input. Not that he had any reason to complain about the agreement, at least not a valid one. "I don't care for her. She is just an annoying girl." Give it a couple of years and Parkinson will look less annoying. I can guarantee you that. The last boy, a 4th year called Adrian Pusey, spoke. Draco got fed up with the topic of the conversation, so they left the common room at a brisk pace, with Crabble and Goyle following right behind. The trio passed through a few corridors before stopping at a series of doors. Unlike the rest of the houses, Slytherin students had the privilege of individual bedrooms, so after speaking a brief goodnight to his 2 goons, he opened the door of his bedroom and went inside. He of course failed to notice that tonight, he had an unwanted guest with him. Draco threw his bag to one side and paced around the room. "Tusk. So stupid. Why should I care for that annoying girl? If father hasn't ordered me to..." "That's not nice. To talk about your fiancé in such a manner." The voice of Harry had completely startled the boy. "Who's there? Show yourself." Draco shouted with as much authority as an 11-year-old could muster. It wasn't strange to Harry that Draco was unable to recognize his voice. The 2 of them had barely exchanged a few words during the entire year. "If this is a prank, I swear I'm going to tell my father about this." "Imperio." "What?" Draco was covered by a mist that entered his nostrils and made his eyes glaze. losing their vitality. Harry removed the cloak, as there was no more need of hiding. He just had to make sure to erase his memories after his business was concluded. I'm going to ask you a few questions. You will answer only with the truth. Is that clear? Draco looked at him, but didn't question Harry's presence in his room, and he seemed to be perfectly fine with it. Yes, he answered. Okay, here we go. Would your father normally be at home right now? The boy nodded. Yes. The father usually ends his work at the ministry around 4 in the afternoon and then goes home, Draco explained. What about your mother? Harry asked next. She is always at home unless my father takes her somewhere, Draco said without showing much change in his expression, like he was just talking about something very trivial. With an old friend. Poor woman. Is there anyone else at your house? Draco shrugged. Just the 2 house elves. Harry looked satisfied with the answer. He could easily deal with that amount of occupants in the house, especially if it was a surprise attack. Good. Now, is your house located on the top of a hill that oversees a small fishing village called Wiltshire? Yes, those filthy muggles are where they belong, beneath us, Draco said with a satisfied smile. So the house is at the same place I remember. That saves me the trouble of having to delve into the mind of Malfoy, Harry thought, ignoring Draco's racist remarks. Malfoy, look down now. Harry gave a peculiar command to the other boy. Draco obeyed his order without questioning it and moved his head to stare at the floor. Harry examined the top of his head. There was nothing unusual that could be spotted at first glance, but he knew better. This was the place where the tracking mark was applied. From what he knew about this mark, it was not as intrusive as a normal tracking charm. It only kept the general location of the student while inside the castle, but its main purpose was to warn the school if a student left the ward's perimeter without permission, which also included the train station and Hogsmeade. Harry had already removed his own, but for Draco it was better to do something else. Stay like this, Harry commanded. He walked to the boy's desk and picked up a piece of blank parchment he had on it. He used his wand to move the mark to the parchment. The spell was not a complex one, just something that he was taught by a very talented witch one day. The previously invisible ink was now shown with a dark red color on the parchment. All that was left was to reapply the mark on his head when they came back to this room, and no one would even notice he was gone in the first place. All right, Malfoy, hold on to my arm, we are going for a little trip. Harry held out his spare wand and 2 of them disappeared from the room with a faint pop. It was dark and the air was very chilly on the north coast of England. He could glimpse the light coming from the windows of the Malfoy Manor ahead of him. But if a muggle was in his place, they would only see darkness before feeling the urgent need to leave the place. The second part was also meant to affect Harry, but his mental protections were already enough to swat away a compulsion of this level. The manor could almost pass as a castle. The construction looked very ancient and even had a high tower that poked from behind the main building. As much as he always disliked every member of this family, he had to admit that it was an impressive place. Don't let go of my arm, Harry ordered Draco. The Slytherin boy did not question any of his commands and just nodded. They passed the first layer of defense and walked to the front door with no issue. But Harry knew that the danger was far from over. Their strongest defenses were here. Draco was going to be his key to enter the manor. Without the boy, Harry would have to deal with some very nasty protections. He knew this from personal experience, as it was not the first time he entered this place. Voldemort chose the house as his personal hideout for a good reason. Malfoy, invite me into your house, Harry said. Of course, please come into my house. Draco's emotionless delivery made Harry a bit doubtful if this stunt was going to work. He had only heard about this method of bypassing wards from others, but never had a chance to test it. As soon as Draco opened the front door and they stepped inside, he could finally breathe a sigh of relief. But he was also filled with dread. This same method could be used to enter his own manor. This was something he would have to work on. But for now the hardest part was over. All that was left was to find Lucius Malfoy. Who goes there? Is that you, Draco? The voice of Lady Malfoy came from a nearby room. Wait here, close your eyes and cover your ears, Harry ordered Draco before hiding under his invisibility cloak and walking to the door that was now opening. Narcissa Malfoy was not even able to get past the doorframe before she was blasted with a stunner potent enough to send her flying backward until she landed on a nearby couch. The two house elves appeared with a loud pop noise. "Oh no, Mrs. Malfoy," the first house elf cried. The other elf did not seem to care that much, and just stared at the unmoving woman with a blank stare. A red spark of light aimed at the first elf, impacted on the back of the head, and she went down. The other elf stared at Harry with adoration. "Mr. came here to kill Dobby's family?" he asked with an expression that was hard to read. Harry was not expecting to answer any questions before knocking out the elves. But this was not just a random elf but one to whom he owes a great deal, so he decided to try a different approach. "No, okay, maybe I'll kill one of them." Dobby started to jump with joy. "Yes, the evil master is going to leave. Dobby must celebrate." "No, Dobby bad. Dobby must go pushing himself." "Wait, I have to." Pop the elf disappeared before Harry could do anything. "I guess it's fine to ignore that one." "What is all this ruckus?" The angry voice of Lucius Malfoy could be heard coming from upstairs. Harry placed a silencing charm on his shoes and hurried up the stairs without making any noise. "Why aren't you answering, Narcissa?" He reached the door and heard Lucius standing up from his chair and slamming his hands on the desk. "Tabby, Dobby, damn it, you are going to be punishing yourselves all night if you don't answer me this instant." Lucius walked at a quick pace to the door. All Harry had to do was wait. Lucius slammed the door open and was met with Harry's wand pointing at his chest. "What?" Depulso. Lucius was pushed back with tremendous force and crashed against his desk, shattering a piece of it before landing on the floor with a few broken ribs. "Let's see. Your wife and one of your elves cannot answer you because they have been stunned, but you will be glad to know that your other elf is following your wish to punish himself. Or maybe he is celebrating, I'm not sure." Lucius groaned in pain and reached for something on top of his desk. He grasped a black cane and brought it down. Lucius then proceeded to use the harmless cane to support himself. With a smooth motion he had rehearsed a million times, Lucius took his wand off the top of the can and turned around to aim it at Harry. Divulsa. Harry's dark curse cut Lucius's wand in half before it could be used. Along with two of Lucius's fingers, Lord Malfoy screamed in agony and clutched his injured hand. He then moved his face to look at Harry with an enraged expression. "Drop the charade, reveal your true aspect. Who are you?" he demanded. Harry just stared at the other man without saying a word. "Your face looks familiar. James Potter, is that you?" His face contorted with fury. "You damn second-class aura! You dare barge into my house and attack me! I'll have you in Azkaban by tomorrow. And your wife, Crucio." Lucius's sentence was interrupted by his own screams. Harry only held the curse for a few seconds. He needed the man sane enough to talk. Lucius's body trembled like a leaf. "No," Lucius spoke between groans. "The James P. Potter I know would never resort to use that. Does it matter who I am? And you would be surprised with how much can people change after you take away what's important to them." "What do you want?" screamed Lucius. "Just for you to answer a few simple questions, like, where is Voldemort and what is he up to now?" Lucius flinched at the mention of the name. "You are looking for the Dark Lord?" "I don't know anything about that." "Yeah, I didn't expect you to talk that easily. That's why I came prepared." Harry took out a small vial with a dark liquid inside. "Open up." "Veritaserum?" Lucius recognized the vial. "Correct. This is the most reliable method to get the truth. Now open your mouth, 2 drops will be enough." Lucius continued to stare at him and refused to obey. "Want to get the cruciatus again? Don't make this harder on yourself than it needs to be." The Death Eater finally complied and opened his mouth. Harry then proceeded to empty the entire vial down his throat. Lucius started to cough violently. 2 drops was enough. "You bastard. That was for wasting my time," Harry said nonchalantly. He waited for Malfoy to recover a bit. "Okay, let's do a control question. When is the last time you fucked your wife?" Lucius frowned and clenched his teeth, struggling against the potion's effects, but eventually, the compulsion to answer won. 3 years. "Wow, poor woman indeed," Harry lamented. Is it because you are attached to men? No, screamed Lucius. Harry looked at the empty vial with suspicion. Is this really working? He stole it from Snape's personal cabinet, so it should be genuine. I'm going to kill you for this, spat Lucius. Fine, let's say is working. Let's try again. Where is Voldemort? I don't know, he shouted. Harry was not expecting that. If Malfoy was under some contract that prevented him from revealing that information, he should have remained silent. Even the Veritaserum is not powerful enough to override something like a blood oath. You really don't know? How is that possible? When was the last time you saw him? Lucius had to think for a moment. 31 October 1980. That is the day he attacked the Longbottom family. He almost said the wrong name. What happened that day? That day we had a very long meeting to iron down the details for the attacks that were to take place that same night on several members of the vigilante group created by Dumbledore. The Dark Lord had a special interest in the Longbottoms, so he decided to go alone, very much against our recommendation. What did you do then? My mission was to go with Dolohov and kill the Prewets. Damn blood traitors. Molly Weasley family, Harry recalled. Did you succeed? Harry asked. For the most part, only a few of the women survived, for what I know, Lucius answered without noticing Harry's cold expression. What happened next? After our mission was completed, we went back to our hideout and waited for the remaining members to come back. By the end of the night all of them were back, except for the Dark Lord himself. Continue, Harry commanded. Bellatrix and the Lestrange brothers went to look for him at the Longbottom Manor, but like our Lord they never come back. We found out later by the account of two surviving witnesses, Augusta Longbottom and a house elf, that the Dark Lord had been gravely injured during the attack, and had fled the place. What about the Lestrange? Did they find anything? They disappeared after that night. We never saw them or received any message from them again. We don't know what happened to them. But he is still alive, Harry said. It was more a statement than a question. Lucius struggled against the compulsion. Crucio. Lord Malfoy let out a blood-curdling scream. Don't waste more of my time, Malfoy. Your wife and son are downstairs. Don't think for a moment that I will not use them to get what I want. Draco is here? Lucius was startled. Answer me, is he alive? I know about the mark. You? Lucius wanted to be the one to ask questions now, but he knew better at this point. Yes, he is alive, he said in defeat. The mark weakened after the incident, but it never went away, and now is getting stronger. Did he leave with you a black diary, or any other object he considered important, to watch over it? Malfoy looked very surprised at my question. How do you just answer? He left me a book like that, yes, but it's gone now. It vanished one day. Vanish? Harry considered this for a moment. Voldemort may have a way of recalling his Horcruxes back to where he is. That would explain why he couldn't find Ravenclaw's diadem at Hogwarts. And he never tried to contact any of you or use the mark to call upon you. Never. This makes little sense. Why would he disappear with only the Lestrange and never call upon his followers? Were his injuries that bad? But there is something else that is bothering me. He looked at Lucius. You are hiding something else. If Voldemort disappeared without a trace 10 years ago and never contacted you again, why are the Death Eaters still launching random attacks? There may be few and far between, but Harry had found records of dozens of attacks performed by Death Eaters in the last decade. At first he thought Voldemort was just trying to make sure no one forgets about him while he prepares for his return. But if he has not been the one in charge, who is? We have a different leader now, said Lucius. Everyone just agreed to follow someone different? You better tell me everything, Malfoy. The idea was suggested around a month after the Dark Lord's disappearance. The members of the Outer Circle were starting to get anxious by the lack of news from our leader. Some started to suggest that he may have abandoned us or even died. We were having a meeting at my house when someone came up with the idea of having one of us impersonating the Dark Lord in order to calm everyone. After all, only the members of the Inner Circle knew what the Dark Lord looked like. I don't think Voldemort would have appreciated that. Harry commented. So who took the mantle of the new Dark Lord? Lord Parkinson. Parkinson? He didn't recall much about that man from his past life, which can only mean he was very unremarkable. Okay, continue. It was only meant to be temporary, a few months, maybe a year, until our Dark Lord returned. But he never returned, and Lord Parkinson's influence became stronger. As time passed, he gained the favor of most inner circle members, and then he started to show himself in front of the outer circle members during our big reunions. He wanted everyone in the organization to recognize him as the one and only Dark Lord. Harry could easily guess that man's intentions. Lucius nodded. His position has become unshakable now. He is truly a Dark Lord. And what is his goal? Certainly you are not going to tell me that he expects to take over the Coney with his magical might. No, Lord Parkinson is only decent when it comes to practical magic, but he is a cunning man. We have spent years following his instructions to infiltrate the most influential positions in the ministry, as well as gaining seats of the Wizardgamut to our side. In just 1 or 2 more years, we could have complete control of the country. A war of politics, Harry said with dread. He had no clue how to fight something like that. And why did your group start to increase the attacks recently? He asked. What do you know about the attempted kidnapping of Lily Potter? He added. Oh, that was just a plan to lure out James Potter. The Auror has been sticking his nose in our business too much lately. He has been trying to gather evidence of any illegal dealings. You plan to use his wife to lay a trap for him and kill him. What about her? Were you going to kill her too? He tried to sound detached at least. A smile appeared on Malfoy's face. Eventually, after we had our fun. Harry clenched his wand. If that's why you don't touch your wife, you only liken it when they resist. Is that it? Malfoy would have probably answered that one even without the Veritaserum. Is the one thing those mudbloods are good for. I like to see them squirm beneath me like Avada Kedavra. While he was reminiscing about his good times, a flash of green light hit Lucius Malfoy on his chest and his lifeless body fell on the polished wooden floor. Enjoy your time in hell, Lord Malfoy. It's perfect. Harry smiled at the formless metallic and multicolor substance floating in front of him. He had been a bit worried about losing his batch of magicoid alloy since he hadn't been able to check on it for an entire month. But after a thorough inspection he concluded that everything was in a perfect state. This may be the best one I have ever created. The ambient conditions of this chamber seemed to be ideal. He clutched his wand and started to transfigure and reshape the metal. There was no time to waste. Once it was out of the cauldron, the magicite alloy would start to cool down and solidify very rapidly. And once it was done cooling, the metal would become nearly indestructible by any means. Harry got to work. He started by dividing the mass of molten metal into 7 parts. 4 were transformed into rings, 2 into earrings, and the last one took the shape of a pendant. Now, on to the next step. The 7 small arkstones he had prepared in advance flew off the table and embedded themselves into the jewelry pieces he had just created while the metal was still soft. The previously multicolor metal was now turning into a dark shade of blue. I need to hurry. There was little time left, and he still had to complete the most important step, engraving the 7 runic arrays onto the metal before it completely cools down. Without the runes these would be nothing more than some pretty pieces of jewelry, and very expensive ones at that. He picked up the runic engraving tools he had previously set on the nearby table, and started to carve the runes on the surface of the metal. He had practiced writing this particular set of runes hundreds of times during this year in preparation for his moment, so now he was able to perform the task with swiftness and precision. Less than 2 minutes later he had completed the runic engraving in all 7 pieces. As the metal finished its cooling process, its color changed to a beautiful silver with a light blue tint on its surface. Harry placed the 7 pieces on the table and carefully examined them one by one, looking for any flaws or mistakes in his work. After all, a single poorly engraved rune could cause a catastrophic failure when trying to use the artifact. Harry smiled in satisfaction after finding no flaws in his work. He then began to place them on 2 rings on each hand, one on the pinky finger and one on the thumb, to keep them as separate as possible and avoid contact between 2 charged arkstones. For the pendant he had prepared a resistant piece of magical string that he used to tie it out around his neck. The last 2 pieces were earrings, so he was forced to pierce his ears to secure them in place. He chose to put them at the top part so it was easier to conceal with his messy hair. The placement for each piece of jewelry was not carelessly chosen by him. Years later, after its initial invention, the magic storing jewels received several upgrades. Over a decade after the start of the last war, a talented squib boy came up with the idea of combining a set of jewels to create a runic array where each piece will complement and enhance each other. The number 7 is a magically important one, and certain numbers have power in them when it comes to magic at least. And thus, the 7 Arkstones array artifact came to be. Let's give it a test run. Despite its small size, each of the Arkstones is able to hold the equivalent amount of magic of an adult wizard. By activating one after the next, he could perform 7 times the amount of magic that a normal adult wizard would be capable of. However, the true potential of the artifact could only be seen when all 7 were activated at the same time. These stones had been absorbing the ambient magic of the chamber for an entire month, and were filled to the brim. Following Harry's will, all 7 became active and started to shine with a strong blue light. Let me see how unbreakable these columns actually are. Professor McGonagall told me that Professor Dumbledore will not be able to teach defense today, Hermione remarked during breakfast. So we have free time today. Lavender perked up after hearing the news. Semon's rare for the headmaster to leave without much of warning like this. Something serious must have happened, said Parvati. That's what you always say, and is never something serious, huffed Lavender. Excuse me? When did I do that? Parvati looked offended. Well, what about last month when Faye's cat went missing and you came up with the idea that the poor kitten was eaten by an acromantula that remained hidden in the castle? Lavender explained. That could have been true, Parvati exclaimed. I told you already, there is no way the professors would have missed something like that. Hermione hated when people talked bad about her professors, or suggested they were incompetent at their jobs. The bushy-haired girl turned her head to look at Harry, who was currently reading a newspaper at the table. Say, Harry, do you know if something important happened? Maybe. He handed her the paper. Read the front page. The girl did just that. Lord Lucius Malfoy murdered. Wait, Malfoy. What? Shouted Parvati. Let me see that. Malfoy. Like Draco Malfoy from Slytherin. Hermione had only seen him a few times when he came to pick up fights with Neville. That's his father. I just noticed that he is missing from the Slytherin table, Lavender said. This is a huge deal. According to my father, Lord Malfoy was one of the most influential wizards in the country, Parvati said while looking at the paper cover. Harry went on to finish his breakfast, not really caring much for their conversation. One down, he told to himself. The school year came to an end without any more extracurricular activities. Draco had been a lot quieter after he came back. He also stopped trying to pick fights with Neville, Ron and Seamus, and at least Neville was grateful for that. It was hard to tell how this change was going to affect Draco in the long run, but this was not something Harry was going to worry about at the moment. He had better things to think about than Draco Malfoy. The boy who lived had a bit too much excitement for his first year, and became somewhat paranoid when he was outside the common room. So it was a good thing he never learned about the assassin who had been hired to kill him. As far as the students knew, Professor Naya had just gone back to his country due to some personal emergency. Daphne didn't try to contact him for more meetings after they were done with their occlumency practices. She did promise to practice hard during the summer, and that could only mean that next year she was going to pressure him some more to satiate her inquisitive mind. In some ways, Daphne reminded him of Hermione. When there is something she wants to know, she never seems to give up. He had no idea of what to expect for next year. With Lord Malfoy dead and the diary gone, things have become truly unpredictable. Was Neville even a Parselmouth, like the previous him was? Harry wondered. This leads him to another more important question. Was Neville even a Horcrux? He does have the cursed scar, but since Voldemort didn't die, would the Horcrux still be created? Could the deaths of his parents have worked as the catalyst this time around? The prophecy still existed in this timeline. He was at least sure of that. If the prophecy was still the same, the events of that Halloween night should have been very similar to the ones he knew, just with a different baby. But the many differences seemed to point towards something else going on. Voldemort survived, but something very bad must have happened to him that forced him to flee and remain hidden for over a decade. He is not the type of man who would just hide in fear. He was accomplishing something. If I could get my hands on the prophecy, that would likely solve a few questions I have. He only knew with certainty that the beginning of the prophecy was still the same, from what he heard from his parents, but that was the only part they knew. The wording in a prophecy is of extreme importance. A single discrepancy in the contents could change everything. Tragically, the only person with the knowledge he needs is Albus Dumbledore, the most secretive person he knows. Are we there yet? The voice of Ron broke through the noise of the train moving over the tracks. He ignored it. Even the Dumbledore he knew from his past as a grandfather and a mentor was only willing to share the most important information during his last moments of life, even though he was the subject of the property itself. Are we there yet? Ron asked, louder this time. He may be willing to share some things with Neville one day when he is older, but why would he share anything with him? Harry Potter was not an important figure in this timeline. He was just the son of an a talented Muggle-born witch. Unfortunately, there was no easy alternative way to learn the contents of the prophecy. There may still be a copy at the Ministry, but only Neville could get that one. To take that route, he would need to reveal everything to the boy, and he was not ready to know those things. Oh shit, I'm starting to think like the old man, Harry realized. Are we there yet or not? Ron shouted again. Harry regretted sitting in the same compartment as the not-so-golden trio. He was initially going to sit with Hermione, but that compartment was quickly filled with several other first-year girls. Apparently Lavender and Parvati were very popular among the young girls. That left him with few choices, so when Neville offered to sit with them at the end of the train, he accepted the offer without much consideration. Ron, you are being a bit rude, Neville said. Come on. He took the window seat. Ron pointed at Harry. Least he can do is tell us. So, are we there? Yeah. Shut up already, Harry snapped. Something he immediately regretted after seeing the startled faces of the three children. I'm sorry, Ron, I didn't mean to. Oh, look, we are there. Harry pointed out of the window. The train station was finally in sight. Harry hurried to get off the train. He had no more patience to deal with kids. Harry, someone called his name. Except for this one. He went down to one knee and let his little sister jump to him. I missed you too, Holly. Despite the short time they had known each other, Harry had become very attached to the little ball of sunshine that was his little sister. Too bad he could not say the same about the other one. Most of the letters he had sent from Hogwarts during the year had been for her. He never had a sibling before, so he didn't know if this was a normal feeling. Welcome back, Harry. He was now welcomed by the sight of his mother. Ready to go home? There is a treacle pie waiting for you, she added with a warm smile. If I recall well enough, the last time, at the end of my first year, the only thing waiting for me at the house was my aunt yelling at me to hurry up to drop my junk in the cupboard so I could go clean the garage. This is quite the improvement, were Harry's thoughts. I'm ready to go home. The Potter family was having dinner together. Let me see it too. Lily was showing their son's report card from school to her husband James, while Lyra asked to see it. Lily handed it to her. Here. A smirk appeared on Lyra's face. You only got acceptable. Wait until I get to Hogwarts. I'm going to bring a lot of outstandings. Lyra, that's enough, warned her mother. But Mom, is true. I have been studying all year and I even have your notes for charms. There is no way I will not get a few owed it. At least. Lyra, that's not what your mother is upset about, and you know it, said James with a stern expression. The girl glanced at Harry. He wasn't even looking at her, and instead he just focused on enjoying his desert in peace. This appeared to make her angrier. Is it because of what I said of his grades? But who cares? Look, she pointed at Harry. He doesn't care at all what I say. Lyra, that's quite enough, said James. She looked at her brother again. He had just finished his piece of tart and was now licking the fork. He has been like a completely different person since he came back from the hospital. He doesn't seem to care about anything. Is like he lost half his brain or something. Enough, shouted Lily. Go to your room now. Lyra huffed in annoyance, threw the report card on the table, and rushed out of the kitchen. The kitchen remained in silence for a few seconds after Lyra slammed the door on her way out. "It seems like my lack of reaction has backfired," remarked Harry. Since arriving here and learning about what his previous self had done to Lyra, he had been extremely careful around his second sister. He had tried his best to avoid doing anything that could upset her, as if trying to compensate for the other Harry's actions. He ignored all of her attempts at upsetting him, thinking that she was just venting her frustrations about the treatment she had been receiving over the years. Harry thought that she deserved at least this much, so he let her say whatever she wanted, thinking that eventually she would become satisfied and stop. "Harry, this is not your fault," said Jane. "No. I have been a terrible brother to her," said Harry. "And that was very much an understatement." "That wasn't—" Lily stopped herself before saying that wasn't you. "That is not your responsibility," she said instead. "Is not completely true, that was still part me. He didn't know why the previous Harry became that way, but he still felt somewhat responsible for his behavior." "Is something wrong?" They have just noticed Holly, who was sitting at her chair with an upset expression. "Oh honey, everything is okay. We just had a little misunderstanding, that's all." Lily tried her best to calm her daughter. "Do you want me to go talk with her?" asked James, his wife. "No, let me do it. I have been meaning to talk to her about a few things," said Lily. "I can take Holly to play for a bit," offered Harry. The mood of the little girl improved immediately. "Really? Sure, you know. I brought with me a set of exploding snaps. Why don't we try it out?" He had found an old set from the 1800s in the room of requirement. The idea was to sell it, but after finding out that it wasn't particularly valuable, he decided to keep it. "That game is a bit dangerous for a child, Harry," said Lily. "You are exaggerating, Lily. The modern sets come with several safety features, is completely secure." James brushed off her worries. "Fine, but only for an hour. Then is bedtime for you, little lady." She hugged her daughter before placing her down so she could go with Harry. "Why didn't you wait for me at the library, Holly? I'll go get the cards from my bag." Harry looked around the kitchen until he spotted the elf, waiting on a corner. "Oh, before I forget, Mipsy." "Yes, Master Harry? Is there anything you need?" The elf approached. "No. I just wanted to say that the treacle tart was delicious. I would love to eat it again sometime." The elf had a bright smile. "Thank you, Master Harry. I can make it again any time you want." "Don't take her on that offer, Harry. You'll get fat," his father warned. "Okay. I'm going to take Holly to the library and then I'll go check on Lyra. Don't let her wait too long by herself, Harry. And remember to bring her to her room by 8 o'clock, said her mother. "Of course, Mom." Harry was about to leave the kitchen when he noticed his father. It seemed like he wanted to say something. "Harry, tonight after you take Holly back, I want you to come talk with me at my studio. There are some important things we must discuss. I know you must be tired, but I may have to leave for a work trip tomorrow, so we need to talk tonight." "Sure, Dad, I'll be there in an hour," Harry promised. After putting out the fire at the library and escorting his little sister safely to her room, Harry made his way to his father's office. "Man, those exploding snaps were truly dangerous. I don't remember them being so potent." He could not help but wonder if that set was defective. "I'll have to buy some new ones. No more second-hand stuff," he promised himself,